All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from StreetScores. Sorry I've been busy and I know I'm late, but just in case for those of y'all that probably only watch me, or also just for the fact that me putting this information together and presenting it to y'all helps me retain it as well, we got to dive into everything that Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have said over the past couple of days at the NFL's owner meetings. And of course, I'm going to do another video on like a lot of the major rule updates and changes and things like that, because the NFL is going to look very different this next year. So be on the lookout for that video. But today we're talking about joint practices. Adam Peters talked about potentially trading down. Of course, we got to talk Terry McLaurin extension and how much money that may be and when we can expect timeline wise for a Terry McLaurin extension to be done. Also, Brandon Coleman potentially moving to right tackle according to Dan Quinn. We also talk Tush push, how Dan Quinn feels about it. Adam Peters gives his entire team building strategy. We got to dive into that. And then, of course, they also spoke on a lot of their trades and free agent signings as well. They're hyping them up. They're really excited about guys like Javon Kinlaw, Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. They even talk about how they're potentially going to utilize them as well. We're going to dive into all of that and more. And of course, I have a trivia question for you. I will give you the answer at the end of the video. Name the only two Commanders players to force a pair of opponents' fumbles each in 2022. Honestly, I didn't expect for that to be the answer. So stay tuned for that at the end of this video. And before we get into everything, make sure you still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, and still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned to all of the content. And instead of wasting even more of y'all time, let's go and dive into this video right now, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so we're going to start with Dan Quinn because he spoke most recently. I mean, I guess we could have gone in chronological order, but I prefer to start with Dan Quinn because I feel like also Brandon Coleman wise is probably the topic that I personally care the most about. So instead of holding it to the end of the video, trying to clickbait y'all and stuff like that, I say we go ahead and talk about Brandon Coleman now, because I still feel like this is an interesting debate topic because Dan Quinn feels like he's going to move the right tackle. I personally feel like his highest ceiling is at guard. Let's get to it. Well, first of all, shouts out to DeMeco Ryans because, of course, NFL owners meetings, you have the head coaches, general managers, owners all in the same place. And so even DeMeco Ryans, the head coach of the Texans, was asked about the whole Laramie Tunsil situation. And he said that he believes Laramie Tunsil can help the Commanders prosper. Of course, Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans delved deeper into the decision to part ways with Tunsil when probed by JP Finley, because JP Finley of Commanders, he's one of our reporters. He went to DeMeco Ryans and asked him about the Laramie Tunsil trade. And then the former linebacker also gave the player a glowing reference and acknowledging the impact it can have for Daniels in 2025 and beyond. He said, quote, "I thought it was a move that was beneficial to everyone. At the same time, it was a move where we were able to get some valuable draft picks out of it. Washington was able to get a really good player as well. So I think it benefited both teams. You get in one of the top one-on-one pass protectors in the NFL. So I think it will definitely benefit Jaden Daniels from having a guy who knows how to protect his blind side," unquote. So thank you for that, DeMeco Ryans, for, even though Laramie Tunsil is no longer on your team, for you to still go out of your way to compliment him that much, especially. Shouts out to DeMeco Ryans. Again, we're going to get to Brandon Coleman soon, because now with the addition of Laramie Tunsil, that's why Brandon Coleman, who was starting at left tackle last year, he's going to have to move. We'll get there. But Dan Quinn also talked about Laramie Tunsil as well. He said, quote, "What a cool addition to add somebody of Laramie Tunsil's caliber to play the position. Everyone knows it's one of the hardest spots, and he's done it at such a high level. So to add guys like Laramie and Deebo into this crew and have them a part of how we are doing things moving forward, kudos to Adam and his staff to add a really cool player to the team," unquote. And again, while complimenting Laramie Tunsil by saying, quote, "Somebody of that caliber is a big deal," unquote, he also potentially said that Brandon Coleman is heading to the right side. He said, quote, "We'll start him at tackle," unquote, but he's got experience to play both tackle and guard. And shouts out to Mitch Tilsley. He brings up a good point. To me, this makes the most sense for Coleman. He showed some really good flashes last year. Obviously needs to create more consistency, but he has the tools and the tape to be a long-term starting tackle. And this always goes back to my debate about, I feel like personally his highest ceiling is at guard. I think he has Pro Bowl, even all-pro potential at guard. That's why I prefer him there. But at the same time, if you have a player that can be great at guard and good at tackle, because tackle is a higher value position, it's a position that's it's more difficult to find a guy that's good at it due to positional value, you probably want to put him at tackle for that reason. Again, I prefer him at guard, but I can also see why you would put him at tackle, especially with the fact that, say, right now our tackle depth is not very good. Like right now, it's Laramie Tunsil and Andrew Wiley who can play both guard and tackle, and Brandon Coleman who can also play both guard and tackle. Outside of that, I don't really like any of our, especially after losing Cornelius Lucas, I don't like our tackle depth. Guard, we have a lot of interior offensive line depth. I like Nate Herbig. I like Nick Allegretti, who can start for you at left guard. I prefer him as an elite backup option, but he can start for you there. We had a top 12 offensive line last year with him starting at left guard. And then of course, you have Samuel Cosmi when healthy. Again, Andrew Wiley can even play some guard. Trent Scott looks way better at guard against the Detroit Lions after Samuel Cosmi got hurt than he ever looked at tackle. So we're like 4 or 5 deep at guard, whereas tackle, especially if you don't include Brandon Coleman, we're only 2 deep. But again, if you throw Brandon Coleman in there, that's 3. My point is, right now, even though I prefer Brandon Coleman at guard, if there's an injury to Andrew Wiley or Laramie Tunsil, you would prefer Coleman to step in at one of those tackle spots to start, right? But then that if he were to be starting at guard and then you do that, now you got to shuffle the entire offensive line. Now you got to find somebody to replace him at guard, and he's been training at guard the entire offseason knowing that he would start there. Now he suddenly got to play some tackle because there's an injury. So, you know, to play it safe, our safest option is to play Brandon Coleman at tackle. I just feel like our highest ceiling option is to play him at guard. Shouts out to Brandon Coleman, though, because he played 775 snaps at left tackle for the Commanders last season, but he's also had plenty of experience playing both guard and tackle at TCU. Remember, he was a 2024 third-round pick, but he allowed 9 sacks and 29 pressures last season as a rookie at left tackle. But, of course, you saw some serious flashes, like the game he played against Trey Hendrickson, the NFL sack leader last year. He shut him down for the most part. I think Trey Hendrickson had like, I think 1 sack, and I don't even remember if that was against Brandon Coleman or not. But Brandon Coleman, against the best pass rusher last year statistically, had his arguably best game of the season against him, and then performed worse against lesser competition. But like I always say, man, if you show me flashes, I feel like as a coach, it's easier and a far better start to teach somebody to do something that they can already do more often. I prefer to teach you to be more consistent than to try to coach you into something that you've never done. So I'll take the flashes. I can see that. I like where Brandon Coleman is headed talent-wise. I feel like either way, we're going to be happy. Like, we could debate guard or tackle. At the end of the day, he's a really good player. He's still of a third-round pick, no matter what he ends up starting at. He's definitely going to play at a higher level in value than where he was drafted, so I'm happy. But to let you know, Brandon Coleman did play 716 snaps at guard throughout his college career, and 255 of those were at left guard in his final season, as he also moved around at left tackle that final season as well. But coming out of college, he had a lot of tackle experience, but his most recent season before he got drafted, before we took him in the draft, he was more so a starting left guard. So again, I feel like ultimately his highest ceiling is at guard. I feel like he could be an elite starting left guard, especially if you have Samuel Cosmi healthy. I feel like that's the most athletic guard duo in the entire NFL. Then Tyler Biadasz is a top 5 center. Laramie Tunsil is a top 5 left tackle. And then Andrew Wiley is solid at right tackle for me. That's just my personal opinion. But right now, Rep the District brings up a good point. As of right now, your starting offensive line seems like it'll probably be Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, probably Nick Allegretti at left guard, Tyler Biadasz at center, Andrew Wiley at right guard, and Brandon Coleman at right tackle. Now, when Samuel Cosmi comes back healthy, then it's a debate as to of course, Samuel Cosmi's automatically going to start at right guard. We know that. But then who started left guard? Do you go ahead and put Andrew Wiley from right tackle to right guard now to left guard, or do you just leave Nick Allegretti at left guard? I think I prefer Wiley starting at left guard over at Nick Allegretti, but I don't feel like it's a big enough difference for it to really matter. But shouts out to Rep the District. He also brings up a good point. He said, you may not like Nick Allegretti, but the staff really does. And then Disco also brings up a good point. He says, I trust the staff. Whatever the staff does, I'm with it basically, and I feel like this staff has definitely earned the benefit of the doubt. We can have our own opinions about what this staff should and shouldn't do, but this is the same staff that took a 4-win team all the way to the NFC Championship game in just one season. Whatever they decide, even if I disagree, I'm assuming it's the best possible choice because they're doing things that even exceeded my expectations. My ideas for what we should have done going into the 2024 season probably would not have landed us in the NFC Championship game. So I'm just going to humble myself, even though I feel like Brandon Coleman's better as a starting left guard. Go ahead and put him there and don't look back. Future Pro Bowl, All Pro. They want him at right tackle? Cool with me, man. Also, shouts out to Nikki Javala because she pointed out the fact that, for clarification, she was told that Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley will both start the offseason program at right tackle and compete there. So it sounds like Nick Allegretti is like your certified starter at left guard. And then, of course, Samuel Cosmi will start at right guard whenever he is healthy. And it's a competition between Brandon Coleman and Andrew Wiley who's going to start at right tackle. That's interesting. Whether one moves inside the guard depends largely on Samuel Cosmi's timetable for recovery from a torn ACL. But just say, best case scenario, Samuel Cosmi is ready by week 1 to start at right guard with no holdbacks, no pitch count, nothing like that. Then again, I'm assuming Brandon Coleman will win the right tackle spot. I'm just super assuming that. So then my only question is, does Nick Allegretti or Andrew Wiley start at left guard? Or maybe who knows, we get to the draft, maybe like in the 4th round, they find a starting left guard. Or maybe they take my Georgia dog, Tate Ratledge in the 2nd round, who knows? And then he's ready to start at left guard. And then that's like a super, I think that has the potential. You get Tate Ratledge in like the 2nd round, even though I feel like edge rusher, corner, and even maybe wide receiver are bigger needs. You get Tate Ratledge in the 2nd round. That's top 5 offensive line off rip. Laremy Tunsil at left tackle, man, come on, man. And again, I love Brandon Coleman. That's why I mean, even just beyond the versatility, I think like as an individual position of guard or tackle, I like him at either one. I just think he has a higher ceiling at guard. But the fact that he can do both, depending on what's best, the best setup for your offensive line, whatever combination you can put your best 5 guys out there on the field at any given time, Brandon Coleman's versatility to give you left tackle, left guard, or right guard is monumental. And then also, shouts out to JP Finley because he brings up a good point. He said when the biggest news is Brandon Coleman going to right tackle, that's how you know you've got a real football team, unquote. And that's a great point. We're not talking about quarterbacks. We're not talking about controversy off the field. Right now, our biggest debate topic, you could argue right now going into this draft, is what are our biggest needs? Edge rusher, pass rusher, I feel like most likely, and where Brandon Coleman should move now that Laremy Tunsil is going to start at left tackle where Brandon Coleman was starting last year. I mean, hey, we're doing good things. If that right now are the hottest topics in our fan base, and people talking about Jaden Daniels' mom and stuff like that. Like we've come a long way from just a couple of years ago. Now also, Dan Quinn spoke on Jonathan Jones's usage as well as far as cornerbacks go. He said the Commanders will probably plan to use Jonathan Jones a little more inside than out, but he will play both. Quote, provide some insurance when you can do both. And that's why they went and got him. There's that versatility. When in doubt, you have an injury to outside or inside, Jonathan Jones can contribute to either one, whichever one you need the most. And plus, it's part of a rotation since, you know, defensive backs you don't want them playing every single snap unless they're like a shutdown corner. So as he rotates in the game, if Mike Sanders still needs a break, then Jonathan Jones can step in at slot or outside. You know, it just depends on what's going on. But now I'm also thinking, does that mean that we still really need an outside corner as like far as starting wise? Because if they see Jonathan Jones as more of a slot, Mike Sanders still, I feel like, will more than likely move back into the starting slot. I feel like that was the plan for him. That's why they started him there to start the season. I feel like they moved him to outside more so as a necessity because Benjamin St. Juste was getting cooked on one end. Michael Davis was unplayable. Emmanuel Forbes was unplayable. Mike Sanders still ended up outside. Even though he played very well there, he ended up out there out of necessity. I'm not sure if that's necessarily their long-term plans for them to keep him there. I feel like they ultimately want to move him back into the slot, but we have a bunch of slot corners right now. Jonathan Jones is more so a slot corner. Mike Sanders, I feel like ultimately he's going to be a slot corner for his long-term, and I think he could be a good outside corner. I think he has the potential to be literally the best slot corner in the NFL. That's how high I am on him. Similar to Brandon Coleman, I think he could be a good right tackle. I think his highest ceiling is guard. Same thing with Mike Sanford still there. And then also Noah Igbenogany. That's another slot corner right there. So again, are we assuming that Mike Sanford still maybe moves back inside to start in slot? Or are we just leaving Mike Sanford still and Marshawn Lattimore as your two outside corners, and then Jonathan Jones and Noah Igbenogany will split the slot duties? I mean, but again, that's the advantage of having great versatility, because again, Jonathan Jones, Noah Igbenogany, and Mike Sanford still can all play outside and slot, even though I prefer all three in the slot. But my point is, again, if Jonathan Jones is more of a slot corner, who's your starting outside corner if Mike Sanford still is best at slot corner? Instead of having to put him at outside because we have to, maybe in the first round we go corner, and then your outside corners are cornerback X, who we get in the draft, Marshawn Lattimore on the outside, Mike Sanford still starting in the slot, and then you have Jonathan Jones and Noah Igbenogany as excellent depth. I mean, elite depth. That would be an elite cornerback room, in my opinion. And then also talking about Mike Sanford still, Dan Quinn said that Mike Sanford still will probably continue to work inside and outside because, quote, he's shown the ability to do both, unquote. So that doesn't really give us any answers as to which one he's going to do, but they're going to continue to work them both. I mean, I guess if anything you could take from that is that they don't definitively see him moving back to the slot, so they're still open there. It just depends. Well, whatever we do in the draft, maybe the third phase of free agency after the draft, if we don't bring in another corner that deserves to start it outside, sounds like Mike Sanford still will end up starting outside yet another season. Then joint practices. Dan Quinn said that, first of all, the training camp will be in Ashburn this summer. He confirmed that, and that's really interesting too, because most teams have their training camps in the same city every year. There's not a lot of teams that have to wait until a certain point in the offseason to find out where their training camp's going to be. So that's just a constant update that Dan Quinn, Adam Peters is going to keep having to give y'all, that I'm going to have to keep reporting on. I just thought that was weird because most teams don't have to really discuss that. It's the same place every year. What do you mean? If you ask a lot of fans from other teams. But there was talk of them going away. He also said that he'd like to have 2 joint practice sessions, liked having 2 last year. I did too. I would like to do that again. I felt like those joint practices with the Jets and the Dolphins were like very pivotal to like the development of a lot of our players, a development of our chemistry. Now, granted, the Buccaneers still caught us lacking week 1. I kept saying that. I was like, I don't think they're that much more talented than us. I just feel like since they were mostly the same team coming from last season, they came in with a certain chemistry and the ability to rely on one another. I mean, they pretty much knew where each other would be any given moment, any panic situations. They knew exactly what to do. We didn't have that. We didn't have any prior chemistry with most of the majority of our team, really. Last year, between the team, the players, the coaching staff, everybody was just everywhere. So we still got caught lacking, but I feel like those joint practices were huge for us getting to the NFC Championship game. I mean, if you take away those joint practices, who knows what could happen? Maybe Jaden Daniels isn't as far along in his development. I mean, a lot of guys, Brandon Coleman, a lot of the rookies, Mike Sanford still, they're not as battle tested by the time we get to the early regular season, where we had to get a couple of wins like the Bengals game, week 3. We probably don't win that game without those joint practices, because we're probably further behind schedule, and the Bengals also catch us lacking, similar to how the Buccaneers caught us lacking. Who knows? So I'm definitely a big fan of joint practices. Plus, it's just more fun to kind of, split up the mundane of just the same thing every day during training camp. Hot training camp practices, our team versus our own team, to go against other teams, to kind of, line us up and see like where we're at. Okay, are we better than this team? Like, are we further ahead, or, things like that. So I kind of like that. And it also mixes it up to where our players get to go against and experience a different type of ball, like a different type of defense, schematically, talent, a different type of offense that our defense has to face, a different type of quarterback, so that they're better prepared going into the regular season. And then, of course, joint practices between NFL teams have become increasingly popular over the last decade. Shouts out to Serena Burks of Commanders Wire for this one. Typically, each NFL team hosts its own practice and training camp, but in recent years, some teams have held practices with other teams to help evaluate player personnel more effectively heading into 53-man roster cuts. These practices normally take place in August, when training camps and preseason games are in full swing. You typically do joint practices with your teams that you're going to end up playing in the preseason. The Washington Commanders have recently held joint practices with teams like the Jets, the Ravens, the Dolphins, among others. In 2025, it seems the Commanders and the New England Patriots are planning a joint practice. And I like that too, because Mike Vrabel is such a hard-nosed coach. I feel like him and Dan Quinn are pretty much cut from the same cloth. I feel like Dan Quinn is the better of the two, but they're pretty much the same, very serious about their business, leader of men type of guy. So I like that. But It started with Mike Vrabel before Dan Quinn even had a chance to speak to the media, and from before we could even hear from him about it. Patriots head coach Mike Vrabel told the reporters the Patriots and the Commanders are waiting league approval on a joint practice in Foxborough, Massachusetts this upcoming training camp, which also means that the Commanders will end up playing an away preseason game with the Patriots. Again, whoever you joint practice with is who's going to be on your preseason schedule, because you're going to play those guys. So out of the 3 preseason games that we play, if we have 2 joint practices with 2 different teams, you can best believe that 2 of those teams we will be having those preseason games against. Also, Dan Quinn then confirmed himself a day later or hours later after Mike Vrabel said it, that he confirmed to talk to the Patriots and some other teams about joint training camp practices. So we have the Patriots as one that we're pretty sure we're going to get done. They're just waiting for the NFL to, basically approve it, which I'm pretty sure they will, but I guess this is just how things go. This is just part of the process. And then Dan Quinn is also looking to find another team to do joint practices with. Quinn said that he anticipates having 2 joint practices again like we did last year, with at least one on the road. He thought that they got good value out of traveling to Miami and New York last year, but they only want to do one on the road this year and then do one at home as well. He added that training camp otherwise will be held at Ashburn, not off-site like I already told y'all. Now, tush push wise, of course, the Washington Commanders, who have to play the Eagles 2, really at this point 3 times a year, because we're both really good. We're both going to be in the playoffs. Of course, they had to ask us how we felt about the tush push, because of course you have a lot of other teams complaining, but they don't play the Eagles 2-3 times a year. Some of them don't even play the Eagles once a year. So of course everybody's looking towards the NFC East, especially the team that played the Eagles in the NFC Championship the game before the Super Bowl. Like, how do you feel about it? Especially since y'all were the ones that had to be victims of it over and over again, especially in the NFC Championship game where Frankie Louvu made it look so silly and stupid. But shouts out to Dan Quinn. I love how our coaching staff handles it and what their mentality is towards it, because he didn't really say much about the tush push, but that was by design. He said, quote, "I think I spend more of my time thinking of ways to stop it," unquote, rather than thinking of complaining about it and how do we get it banned and things like that. So shouts out to Dan Quinn. He's basically more so focused on how do we stop it rather than worrying about how we're going to ban it. And I love that approach. Of course, it'd be nice if it gets banned, but shouts out to Dan Quinn for being, again, a leader of men and being like, hey, man, it is what it is. I mean, just in case if the NFL doesn't ban it, well, no matter what happens, we're going to be better prepared for it this upcoming season than we were last season. And that's the end of that. I'm not going to sit here and complain and whine about it like maybe some of these other teams are doing. Even though we got to play them 2-3 times a year, it is what it is. Let's just get to work and let's just get better. Skill issue, right? Maybe it's just a skill issue. Then Dan Quinn also has some interesting things to say about other players, because how about Jaden Daniels? Of course, he spoke about him. He said, quote, "We called them work-ons. These are the things that we want to get better at." So for him, some of the techniques that a lot of the quarterbacks use are footwork and body position of where to go and where to throw. We thought he made a lot of improvement extending plays early on in the season. They were extending to run. And then now they got extending to throw the ball down the field. So having that balance of doing both of those, that's a big deal. And he's basically giving you the clues as the, I've been saying this, like, Jaden Daniels is still not a perfect product. That's why I'm so excited about his future, because you can still watch his tape from last year, even in the playoff games that we were winning, and he was at his best. Well, at that current moment, there's still parts of his game that is like, man, you can make that better. You could tweak that. You could do that more consistently. There's room for him to grow and get even better. And I love the fact that Dan Quinn is acknowledging that like, we can still do some technique things to make him even better and more consistent than he already is, even though I feel like he's already a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Then he also talked about Deebo Samuel. He said, quote, "Coaching against him, this is an explosive player. I mean, a defensive coordinator is always going to respect a great offensive weapon. Not just the scheme, but after he gets the ball in his hands, sometimes you could tell the toughness of a player with and without the ball. He has both of those and an explosive nature. To add a player of that caliber into a tough and strong group, we're really pumped about it," unquote. So this coaching staff, maybe some fans question it, but this coaching staff felt like they hit a home run with the Deebo Samuel signing, or trade, my fault. And then also with the restructuring and the contract, that's why I still keep thinking of it as a signing. And then when we get to the Adam Peters half of this video, he also talked about Deebo Samuel. But one thing you need to know is that this coaching staff that took us from 4 wins to NFC Championship game, 14 wins in just one season, is absolutely excited about Deebo Samuel. They don't just like him, they love him. So be ready for that. And then before we move on to Adam Peters, Dan Quinn also spoke about like the team in general and the environment, and Josh Harris as well as the owner. He said, quote, "What I can say on the team, the environment, the culture they created together to really set high standards for one another, to have that trust and love for one another, that's what being on a good team is all about. And to see how many players wanted to be a part of the team again. I mean, you have from Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner to many others to guys that are coming in. That fired me up. These players have created a culture and environment of really going for it together. If you could do that from the locker room first, it will take care of itself going onto the field." Quote, love to hear it. And then also as far as Josh Harris, he said, quote, "He does what he does. He wants to create an environment that's second to none. I've learned that he's incredibly supportive of the mission of what we do. You learn quickly that he does what he says," unquote. And so the trust from owner to GM to head coach to all of the coaching staff to the players to everybody out of the entire organization to one another, it's beautiful, man. I mean, it's better than the best case scenario that I envisioned years ago whenever Dan Snyder finally sold the team. This is way better than even I thought it could be, and it's beautiful, man, just to even hear Dan Quinn excited about it and talking about it. Now moving on to Adam Peters, because he spoke the day before Dan Quinn, but I wanted to go ahead and get a lot of the Dan Quinn stuff out of the way first because I was really excited to talk about Brandon Coleman, as you can see how long I spent on the topic. And now let's talk the Terry McLaurin extension. While Adam Peters talked about Terry, he said, quote, "We love Terry. We've had some really good conversations with his representatives. We want to make Terry McLaurin a commander for a long time," unquote. When I heard that, man, I was smiling ear to ear, man. Again, I was super busy. I didn't have the chance to sit down and like really get my notes together to record a video. I've been out of the house and I've been everywhere right now. But I was smiling ear to ear seeing that tweet and the quote on my phone, man. I was like, I can't wait to talk about this whenever I get the chance, man. And then Peters also made sure that he let it be known that they've expressed that to Terry McLaurin's side, his camp, his agent, to him. They know, like, Terry McLaurin's side has no doubts that Adam Peters wants him to be a commander for the long run. And I also want to point out the fact that Terry McLaurin is coming off of his best season of his career just this past season in 2024, finishing with 82 catches for 1,096 yards and a career high of 13 receiving touchdowns, was also set a franchise record for receiving touchdowns in a season. But also, of course, the wide receiver market right now, you're looking at potentially like somewhere between 30 to 33, maybe 34 million a year for a new Terry McLaurin deal. If you take a look on the screen right now. And of course, I've shown you this in another video. I did a whole video dedicated to the Terry McLaurin extension experience. But just in case, if you wanted to see it again, this is what everybody's being paid right now. And I would think that Terry McLaurin's probably going to get paid somewhere in between Brandon Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb, somewhere in that 3 to 8 range. That's what I'm predicting. Again, somewhere between 30 to 33, 34 million. I don't think he's going to outdo Justin Jefferson. I highly doubt he outdoes Jamar Chase, but I also don't think he's going to sign for as little as, well, not really little, but relatively, I don't think he's going to sign for less than T. Higgins or Jalen Waddle. I think it's going to probably be, honestly, somewhere in between Amon-Ra St. Brown and CeeDee Lamb. I think, honestly, you could put it somewhere between 3 and 6. And of course, right now, Terry McLaurin is entering the final year of his deal due to make a base salary of $15.5 million this season. So his annual average right now is $23.2 million, which ranks 16th, like 6 spots out of that top 10 that I just showed you with that graphic, which is even behind right now Deebo Samuel's $23.85 million average. So Terry McLaurin's 16th, Deebo Samuel's 15th. But of course, Terry McLaurin is going to shoot up to somewhere more than likely top 5. And also, just to let you know, Samuel Cosmi signed his extension on September 4th last year. That was 4 days before the regular season started. That was before the regular season opener. We'll see if Terry McLaurin has to wait that long. Who knows? I don't really mind because I don't see it being like some type of training camp distraction or something like that. I would prefer if they get it done as soon as possible, but I don't think it's a worry that he's going to end up stepping onto the field week 1 of the regular season without his new contract. I'm pretty sure it'll get done. I think they'll probably get it done sooner than they got Samuel Cosmi's done, because they may want to go ahead and get Laramie Tunsil signed long term as well. He's already made it known that he wants to get paid. He already wants his contract extension more than likely before the regular season even starts. And you probably want to go ahead and pay him now, because he's about to go out there and play at a top 5 tackle level, I believe. And then the price that you could get for him this time next year is going to be way higher than what you can get right now. So you probably go ahead and take that risk. I know he hasn't played a single snap for you yet, but I'll probably go ahead and extend him. I mean, they did the same thing with Samuel Cosme last year. He hadn't played a single snap for them yet, and they went ahead and extended him. So you'll probably go ahead and get Laramie Tunsil done before the season starts as well. I'm predicting Terry and Laramie Tunsil. They'll probably do. Deebo Samuel, I think, is more so on a deal, 1 year prove a deal. Go show us what you can do, and then we'll re-sign you long term. I think Laramie Tunsil and Terry McLaurin will get done sooner. And then Adam Peters also, speaking of Deebo Samuel, showed him a lot of love. He said that he wanted Deebo Samuel from the moment that the San Francisco 49ers made him available. So we were on the lines immediately calling them. And then also Adam Peters' close ties with San Francisco helped him work out a deal to land the former Pro Bowl wide receiver. So shouts out to Adam Peters and his relationship with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, of course, with them previously being on the 49ers as recently as the 2023 season when they made it to the Super Bowl. Now also, while others questioned Washington's trade for Samuel, Peters had zero reservations. He said, quote, he's an incredible competitor. He's an incredible dude. I mean, this is with him talking to Kay Adams on the Up and Adams show. Quote, we wouldn't have brought him in if we didn't think all of those things. If we didn't know what a great teammate he was, a great competitor he was, and obviously he's outstanding on the field. I've been doing this a long time, and there's not too many guys I know that can lift a team on the field more than Deebo with his competitive greatness and like put a team on his back and will you to win games. I mean, that one playoff game against the Eagles was literally Deebo Samuel putting the 49ers on his back. So to get a chance to get him is something we really wanted to do, and he'll be great for offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury's offense, unquote. And I love the fact that he emphasized that, because for any fans that are out there that are still doubting the whole Deebo Samuel trade for a 5th round pick, I mean, the fact that he pointed out the fact that not only do we know that he's a great teammate, we know who he is off the field in the locker room, but also we know he's a great competitor. And this is a guy that when he's at his best can literally carry a team. And that's one of the biggest reasons I'm excited about Deebo Samuel, because Jaden Daniels had to carry the team last year. He was our leading rusher. And look at his receiving core from last year. So now for us to finally bring in a guy that sometimes can put his hand on Jaden Daniels' shoulder and be like, I got it from here. Jaden Daniels didn't get a lot of that last year. And so I'm really excited about him finally having a guy, because Terry McLaurin can be that guy, but defense is literally focused on taking him out of the game. People keep hyping up Quinyon Mitchell. He's a good corner, but the Eagles literally shaded extra defensive back help, safety help towards Terry to where he was technically double teamed most of the time. And so then outside of him, who's going to make a play? Then it's just Jaden Daniels running around for his life trying to make something out of nothing. Then you got his teammates fumbling and things like that. So I'm just really excited about the fact that Deebo Samuel is the type of player that's going to take some weight off of Jaden Daniels' shoulders, and we should all be excited about that at the very least. Now the Javon Kinlaw signing. Adam Peters is very excited about that as well. He said Javon Kinlaw is a tone setter. He's explosive. He's physical. We think he's going to be a great commander. He also said, talking about Javon Kinlaw's freaky size, and says that he can play at any weight, but 320 would be good for how the team plans to use him inside and on the edge. He's going to be really versatile. They're going to move him around. Dan Quinn's going to cook up with him, man. And then Adam Peters said, quote, he plays his best football is in front of him, unquote. So that's why they signed him to that contract, for why a lot of the fans think that they overpaid for him. Adam Peters is predicting that the way that Dan Quinn will utilize him, that if anything, he's actually going to look like he's underpaid, because they feel like he's going to be and again, I'm working on that video right now, but one of the main points I'm going to bring up in the video is that he was hurt the entire time with the 49ers. He finally had like a fully healthy season with the Jets last year, and then you saw some serious flashes as to why the 49ers took him in the first round in the first place. So it's kind of like with all of the setbacks he had last year with the Jets was like his real first, almost like de facto rookie season. And so now he's going to build on that moving forward. And then again, it's not even just me being a homer. I keep bringing this up. Jaden Hinks and Josh Norris of the Underdog, I forgot their exact show on YouTube and podcasts and everything like that, but they even brought up, when it came to the Myles Garrett trade rumors, they said the reason why the best landing spot for him would be the Commanders is because Dan Quinn is the best defensive minded football. And they basically predicted that Myles Garrett, even though he's already won Defensive Player of the Year and arguably the best defensive player in all of football even right now, they felt like Dan Quinn could even unlock another level out of him because he's just that great of a defensive mind. And it's just kind of like, if you don't trust Javon Kinlaw with the 49ers and the Jets, that's cool. But at the very least, let Dan Quinn cook with them real quick. Because even people outside of the Commanders fan base, non-Commanders reporter, completely neutral, Josh Norris, Hayden Hinks, no ties to the Commanders, no reason to boost us up more than we deserve. And they even felt like, they literally said, go check out the video, the Myles Garrett landing spots. And I think they talked about like Cooper Kupp, and go find that video. They literally said there's no more creative defensive mind out there than Dan Quinn, especially with Joe with Junior to his side. They are the least lazy coaching staff. They're not just going to expect a player because they're really talented to figure it out on their own. They're going to put guys in the best situations to succeed as often as possible. They're not going to be lazy. So, I mean, at the very least, trust this coaching staff to get the most out of Javon Kinlaw that's humanly possible. And then Adam Peters also said, quote, Javon had a major injury, knee construction in 2021. To his credit, he fought back and came back even better, which was really impressive. How much he played the last 2 years in San Francisco and how much he played last year with the Jets, those are like his first 2 NFL years in essence. I completely agree. That's the point I just made. And he's got the hunger to get better and better. His best football is in front of him, unquote. Then also Adam Peters spoke on his team building strategy. And really, this is kind of like to y'all that are panicking over what we did this offseason. Please stop panicking. Because his point is, first of all, on potentially trading back or up from number 29, he said, quote, we'll consider everything. Trading up, trading down, we always do. With trading down, you have to have somebody who wants to trade up. And that's the point I keep bringing up. I mean, I know we want to trade back bad, but who wants to trade up for us to trade back with? It takes 2 to tango. I love to trade down all the time, but it has to be somebody else that wants to trade up, and it has to be the right deal, unquote. He wants to make sure somebody's not taking advantage of him because he's desperate to trade back. And I really appreciate that. But I also feel like that people didn't pay enough attention to the fact that I love to trade down all the time. So it sounds like the Commanders are going to be calling to trade down and trade back in drafts for the foreseeable future. That's just an Adam Peters thing. He likes trading back. And we're not even just talking about first round, just like how we traded back in the second round. Ended up with Mike Sanderstill and Luke McCaffrey and those guys. We're going to always be looking for a reason and a good deal to trade back. Just to go ahead and put that in y'all brains. Don't be surprised when we trade back for years to come. That's just what Adam Peters likes to do, but only when the situation is right. He's not going to force it, and I really appreciate that. Also, on potentially trading away more picks after already shipping out several selections in 3 deals since November, Marshawn Lattimore, Laramie Tunsil, Deebo Samuel. He said, quote, everything is an option, just depending on the value, the player and the value. So you never want to close that door. It would be our preference to not do that, but it depends on the situation, unquote. So basically he's saying, we don't really necessarily plan on trading for any more guys, but if somebody that we think is really good becomes available and we can get a steal trade draft pick wise, draft value wise, we'll do it. Even though we only have 5 draft picks right now, and we prefer to not give those draft picks away because Adam Peters loves his draft picks. He feels like he can get a really good player even in the 7th rounds of drafts. So this is a guy that puts a large premium on draft picks. But he's like, hey man, even though we don't want to give away any more of these draft picks, if there's a really good player that becomes available for a price that we feels like is right, or even a steal, we're gonna make that trade. Also, he said that we can look anywhere when it comes to draft targets, and basically that he feels like between his coaching staff, his scouting staff, front office, and all of that, they can get good players no matter the round. Also, shouts out to George Carmi for quote tweeting that and saying, the old football adage is that you quote fill holes in free agency and you can add talent in the draft, unquote. Adam Peters and his staff have done a great job of raising the floor of the roster through free agency. I don't see glaring needs on the roster, although you can always improve, and that's been my point about this whole offseason. The way that you went about free agency and the trades that you made, we have no glaring holes. We have guys that are at least playable at every spot on the team right now. You're going into the draft looking to improve, but we don't have any glaring needs like a lot of these other NFL teams out there where they have to get desperate and draft for team need rather than best player available. We have the floor through free agency. We're going to add ceiling through the draft with a young core. Speaking of the young core, of course, a lot of people are complaining about the whole, like the age of our roster right now. But Ben Standig brings up a good point. He said, quote, the 4 years of drafted misfires from the Ron Rivera era as a leading factor in the roster skewing older, while noting that trades for cornerback Marshawn Lattimore, left tackle Laramie Tunsil, and Deebo Samuel cost in Washington a net of 6 draft picks were executed by the current leadership. The former certainly influenced the latter. Of Washington's 33 draft selections from 2020 to 2023, only 8 remain with the organization and 5 are starters/rotation pieces. De'Ami Brown and Benjamin St-Juste, 2021 draft picks, played extensively last season before signing elsewhere in free agency, but their careers were mainly underwhelming, unquote. Basically, his point is the reason that our roster is so old, the reason that we barely have any draft picks going into this draft right now, and the reason we gave away so many draft picks to get really good players is because Ron Rivera set this team up for failure. And if we want to win right now, if we're trying to take advantage of Jaden Daniels' rookie contract and the low cap hit that he is right now, compared to all these other quarterbacks that are making ridiculous money and making it to where their teams can't improve the roster around their quarterback, then you have to add a lot of veteran guys that can play. Again, you have to bring in floor. And floor, a lot of the times, when you're not looking for guys that the question marks, you're looking for typically guys somewhere between the ages of 28 to like low 30s, because you already know what they are in the NFL already. They've been there, done that for other teams, and you're pretty much assuming and expecting them to come do that for you. And then that's the floor, and then you get ceiling in the draft like we've been saying. And again, so if you're complaining about the roster being old, don't blame Adam Peters, blame Ron Rivera, because we just gotta bring guys in that can play at this point. Is his point? Like, we just literally need to bring in talent. We don't want any holes on the roster. We got to do what we got to do to make that happen. And also, shouts out to, I think it was Craig Hoffman that brought up a good point too. I mean, technically, with as many draft picks we had last year, even though we only have 5 this year, if you average it out, we've drafted like pretty much what a normal team would draft every year. We just used up a lot of draft picks last year after we traded back, and then we have less draft picks going into this draft and the 2026 draft. But on average, we are drafting about the same amount of players over a 3-year span than any other normal team. It just feels crazy right now because we have less going into this year, but we had more last year than you typically would have. And then also, look at this picture right here before we get up out of here. Boy, look how relaxed Adam Peters is, man. Man, feet out and everything, just chilling at the NFL owners meeting, man. That's the GM of a team that he knows is smooth selling. This is a GM right here that knows he has this franchise quarterback. Shouts out to Brandon at J Daniels MVP for even presenting this picture and acknowledging the fact that, yeah, man, this looks like a general manager that knows he has a franchise quarterback. He also even said, this is the feeling that you have when you drafted a franchise quarterback and a franchise cornerback in the same draft. Don't forget Brandon Coleman as well, who's going to be a franchise something. Guard, tackle, we're good to go. He's building a great young core. He's doing whatever it takes to build a great roster top to bottom with a lot of guys that are dependable. Floor, he's adding ceiling through the draft, and he's chilling. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to stress about who's our franchise quarterback. We don't have to stress about, oh man, we have this huge hole here on the roster. Right now, our biggest weakness is pass rush, but we have guys that can get to the quarterback. We just want guys that are better at it, but we don't just straight up have nobody that can do nothing at it. You know, during the Rivera era, and even a lot of the times during the Jay Gruden era, really, you got to go all the way back to the time we were winning Super Bowls. There were always these glaring weaknesses where we have a guy that has no business even playing on Sundays on the field playing for us. Now we don't have that. You got rid of Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, and Michael Davis in the cornerback room. I mean, that's addition by subtraction automatically right there. So again, I feel like we don't have any major holes, and Adam Peters is feeling like that. Like, we're going to go to the draft and just take whoever's just the best guy available. You know what I'm saying? You know, when pick 29 comes, we can't trade back. All right, just give us the best player at whatever position is available, because we have a solid roster top to bottom. We're ready to play on Sundays right now. The draft is just the extra seasoning on top. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please still follow that like button, still follow the subscription button, still follow the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release informative and opinion videos just like this one. I did not expect this video to end up being this long at all. But hey, man, we had a lot to talk about. I guess I could have split this up into 2 different videos, but I feel like that would have been doing y'all dirty, you know, to purposely do a Dan Quinn video, then an Adam Peters video, just, you know, to run up the numbers and clicks and views and things like that. I just feel like it would just be more smooth to go ahead and talk about both, especially since they both talked about a lot of the same topics. So I really appreciate y'all for making it to the end of this video, because I could have just split it in half and then made, you know, get double the views for the same stuff. Either way, I really appreciate y'all. Make sure, oh, the answer to the trivia question, the answers are Jonathan Allen and safety Derek Forrest. I completely forgot about that, man. I ain't even gonna lie. But I really appreciate y'all. Make sure you leave a like on the way out, and of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. With the Brandon Coleman situation, where do you feel like he should start? Right tackle, tackle, left guard, right guard until Samuel Cosme comes back. Let me know how you feel about the whole Tush push situation. How do you feel about Debo Samuel, Laramie Tunsil, Javon Kinlaw? How do you feel about everything that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn had to say that we just discussed in this video? How do you feel about the team building strategy, especially that we just discussed for like the last 5-10 minutes? Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible anytime that I'm not busy. Really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm tired. It's 3 a.m. man. I gotta get up out of here. Catch y'all later. I'm out.